That may have been the best press conference I've ever seen.
Listen, put me in the parking lot, with Bears, and I'll go out there and play. It don't matter.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. And happy War Rapport Wednesday to all who celebrate. Mike G, we're together in the Locked On Auburn studios here in Opelika. All right, so this is just a little bit after Hugh Freeze's opening press conference, and it was one of the best press conferences I've ever seen.
Yeah, I thought he won the press conference, Zach. Hugh Freeze got his message across. It felt a little bit like we were
in church?
Yeah. It felt like a church service.
Am I slouching too much in the pew? No.
Right.
Yeah.
He talked a lot about faith. I thought that he articulated clearly that he plans to be a part of the community, that he wants to be here. He understands what it means to be the head football coach at Auburn University. So, we'll see how it plays out. But so far, I think that was a good start to Hugh Freeze's tenure. Yeah,
I'm there with you. And plenty of memorable moments of it, I think. He did the Creed thing, which Auburn people want to hear. Mm-hmm. He did the whole, kind of take a shot at Saban and Alabama, right? He did that part. He appealed to Bruce Pearl, got Bruce Pearl involved, which checks the marks. And then I think kind of got folks excited about this staff that he could put together. And also just his eagerness for recruiting. I think those are kind of the big takeaways here. Let's start with, I guess let's just go in order here. The first thing you talked about was Carnell Williams. Right. Which news broke, and we kind of speculated on this throughout, the last several editions of the show, but he is officially going to be the associate head coach and the running backs coach moving forward. And you got to think that's good for everyone involved.
Well, there was a lot of speculation about this, Zach. And they opened the press conference. They got that out first. Mm-hmm. First, the guy who saved the program over the last 4 games is going to be here next year. We appreciate his contribution. He's a true Auburn man. I think it was a good move. I think it was an obvious move, though. He needed to do that, right? And so, with all the things kind of being said about him coming in the door, I thought it was a good move to thank him. Actually got a standing ovation to start. A lot of people appreciate what he did for Auburn, and associate head coach, that's big. I think that's a big step for him in his coaching career. And I think it's a good move for Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I'm there with you. And I think just from a recruiting aspect, maybe it allows him to go after more guys than just running backs, which I think is going to be valuable as far as Auburn's got to start building the talent of this roster up, which I think we all agree on that. And the transfer portal will be a big part of that. You asked about that. We'll get to that in a second. But the Bruce Pearl involvement is great. But him talking about quarterbacks and him talking about Robbie Ashford, because let's not kid ourselves with all of this. The biggest winner in Hugh Freeze getting hired is Robbie Ashford. I don't think there's any kind of debate about it.
I think he knows it too, because he's the only player I saw there at the press conference. It was Robbie Ashford, front and center. Listen, at the end of the day, I think Robbie Ashford is Hugh's prototypical quarterback, right? He's got all the athleticism. They're going to work with him this offseason on his arm. We now know that Robbie played most of the season with an AC joint sprain to his throwing shoulder.
In the throwing shoulder. Yeah.
Right. I mean, listen, I don't know if you've ever had a shoulder injury, Zach, but you can't do anything. My shoulder hurts right now. I can barely do the chicken dance.
Sure.
So, for Robbie to play most of the season with it, and he even came out and said that he was in so much pain in that shoulder, some nights he couldn't sleep. Right. Or throw during the week, and then had to go out on game day and get it done. So a healthy Robbie Ashford working with Hugh Freeze. Man, I'm a little disappointed that nobody asked about the strength and conditioning coach that he plans to bring in. That's my thing. I want to know who that guy is going to be.
Sure. Right.
But those guys will be working with Robbie to try to make sure that he can stay healthy for the entire season next year. And he seems like the front runner heir apparent for QB1.
Yeah. And then you asked him about the portal. You also asked him about play calling, right? Which is the biggest appeal to Hugh Freeze, is the offense that he is bringing into this football program. And he's called plays his whole life, but depends on who he brings in.
Yeah, listen, I think one of the biggest disappointments of the last coaching staff was you had a head coach who was an offensive guy, but Auburn consistently lacked an offensive identity. They tried for balance. It didn't work. Cadillac took us back to old school Auburn, early 2000s Auburn, where they ran the ball, and they were mixing some creative passes. So in my opinion, his answer was interesting. Like he said, I've called plays my whole life, but there are some guys out there who might be better at it than me, and maybe I can improve on what they do a little bit, and maybe they can improve on what I do a little bit. So it sounds like it'll be a collaboration, but I think he was going to call plays.
I'm with you. Now, I do think he's going to swing for the fences for a nice staff, right? And he talked about that before. It sounds like people and high-quality coaches all throughout college football have reached out to him since his news has happened, which is exciting, right? Because remember, everybody wants to tell you nobody wants to come to Auburn, right? Remember that. Everybody wants to say, nobody wants to go to Auburn. According to what he's saying, that's false. Like that's not accurate. And so that's great, especially when you look at potential defensive coordinator hires. That to me is going to be the most important hire that he has on this roster.
Yeah, I think that if you're a coordinator looking to take the next step, this is a job. This is the job for you. So if you can get in with this staff at Auburn and be part of the reclamation project that is the Auburn offense, it could catapult you into your next position. So I don't think he'll have a problem finding a coordinator. It's just, will he find the right coordinator?
Yep.
And will they do a good job is the question.
Yep. I'm there with you. And then lastly, before we get into some of the deeper things that he kind of discredited and said no to, the shot at Saban, right? He talked about how he's good friends with Nick and Terry Saban. And he's like, I'm sure they're happy, but I hope they're a little bit worried.
I hope they're getting nervous. Yeah.
Nervous. Is that it? He said nervous. Yeah. I hope they're a little nervous today, which that's the goal, right? That's the goal in all of this is you want to make a hire that Alabama and Georgia don't want you to make.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, at the end of the day, I think this is a different SEC West than what he left. Alabama has somewhat evolved. They become quarterback you. So they seem to know what they're doing with quarterbacks over there now. And it's going to be highly competitive with Brian Kelly coming in and winning the SEC West in year one at LSU. And, Mike Leach having a highly successful year at Mississippi State, for Mississippi State. Lane Kiffin, obviously, he did well enough until the last 4 games to have his name in the Auburn head coaching search. It's going to be highly competitive. Yeah. So, I like he was joking, but he put them on notice a little bit. Auburn's going to be here to compete and here to win.
Yep. All right. So let's touch on some of the things that Hugh Freeze shot down, which I thought was interesting. In just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Got to tell you about our friends at Bet Online. Bet Online is the best place in the world to place all of your sports wagering bets with all of the possible lines and odds and props that you could possibly want. It's all at Bet Online. Just search Bet Online. It's a great site, very easy to use on your mobile device or your laptop, whatever it may be. Just search Bet Online. It's where the game starts. First things first, he was asked by an AL.com reporter about, Greg Sankey, SEC Commissioner Sankey, wasn't going to let you get hired and come back into the SEC. And he's like, I don't think that's true because I could have been an offensive coordinator here, but I decided to go coach at Liberty. Asked it multiple times. He kept saying the same thing, stood his ground. That's a narrative that I've heard a ton, and I just assumed it was true. Right. And the fact that he shot that down, I thought that was really refreshing because that was one of the bigger arguments against the possibility of him being Auburn's next head coach early when we started this process right after Coach Harsin was fired.
Well, listen, Zach, there were a lot of narratives out there about a lot of things. This was a prevailing narrative, so I had heard it a lot too. I'd heard it from Ole Miss fans. So it wasn't just inside the anti-Freeze base, right?
Totally.
It was outside of Auburn that people were saying Greg Sankey's never going to allow him back. So I bought into that as well too. But I thought he answered the question directly. I don't know any that's news to me. It's pretty much what he said. I don't know anything about that. The question was asked again. I thought in poor taste. But what can be said about some of these things that hasn't already been said? With Cohen's opening statement, he pretty much tried to quell those questions before they came. We had a thoughtful and thorough search. We used search firms. We used law firms. We threw holy water on them. Yeah. We did everything we could to figure out if this was our guy and this is where we landed. What I thought was interesting is he said we started and ended with Hugh Freeze, which was an interesting comment that I would like some clarification on.
I don't think that's true, by the way.
I don't think it's true.
I don't think he was the number one choice. So we'll just leave that at that. But still, I think it's a good hire when it comes to everything I think he's going to do on the field. There's no question about it. The other thing that he shot down, what was it? I'm blanking.
He shot down the rumor about the not being hireable, and then he talked about his past transgressions.
Oh no, the other thing he shot down was the report that he said he wasn't gonna.
Oh, it's social media.
Yeah,
social media.
Yeah, and he started smiling when that question was asked. There was a report for folks who missed it, because I don't think we talked about it on the show. Folks who missed it, there was a report saying, hey, he's agreeing to not use social media. His social media account
will be turned over to somebody.
Somebody else would manage it for him. He wouldn't have access to it or whatever. And so he was asked about the report, and halfway through the question, he started like smiling, like borderline laughing. He's like, no, that's not true.
Right.
Which wasn't expecting, but yeah, there we are.
Yeah, made a little bit of a joke about it at the end, Zach, or he's just kind of like, hey, this probably would be smart, but no, that's not true.
Yeah.
Setting the record straight, I thought, on some of these things. I don't know that it matters. I don't know that his social media matters in terms of who's operating it. It just needs to be on the up and up. Like, when you're in the public eye, you have to be careful what you say and what you do. I think he understands that. I think that was made clear to him.
Yeah.
So, again, if you're going to pay a guy $6.5 million, but you can't trust him with his own Twitter, I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised, but interesting to see how many people were like bummed that report wasn't true. It's like, come on, with this age of recruiting and Hugh Freeze being the recruiter he is, you need him on his Twitter. Sorry. This is part of it. You need him there. You need him there for sure. Yeah. And talked a lot about second chances and grace, which, are big, spiritual elements. Yeah. Which he made very clear that his faith is important to him. But all in all, those were my big takeaways, right? He talked about how good of a quarterback developer he is. He stuck his chest out on that one.
Hey, yeah, listen.
He's like, I think I'm pretty good at this. I'm like, okay, Hugh, look at you go.
Yeah, he beat it. And he talked about being able to turn a program around quickly. He understands, Auburn fans don't want to see a 34-year rebuild. They want to see him come in, utilize the portal, and get athletes in here who can win now.
Mm-hmm. Have you like looked at next year's schedule?
I have.
It's pretty manageable.
Yeah, it's very manageable.
If you told me Auburn went 8-4, 9-3 next year, I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, because based on what Cadillac was able to do over the last half of this season, it hurts to say, but like the truth is that this team was being mismanaged, and the talent looked worse because of morale issues and dysfunction, and the utilization of some people just wasn't what it should be. They made a lot of missteps, and they just got back to simple football. And it turns out we have some guys who can do football pretty well. So if they can find a way to to fill some holes and plug some pieces, I think he has a chance at an 8-win team. I mean, this was a 5-win team that almost like came so close to beating LSU. Went to overtime with Mississippi State. I just don't think it's a stretch.
I don't either, especially if the offense could just be a little bit better. The defense is going to be there. Mm-hmm. You got to fill a lot of holes, and we'll talk about that. Well, let's talk about it now. The transfer portal, you asked about that.
I did.
I mean, he's going to have to totally revamp this roster in the next 30 days.
Well, another knock on the last guy was lack of success in the transfer portal, right? Not being able to get guys, and it's seemingly, look at how dynamic the transfer portal has been for some other marquee programs. I mean, USC may have gotten a Heisman out of it, right? South Carolina got Spencer Rattler out of it. He started slow, ended the year a little bit on fire. They've got to be able to go into the portal and convince kids that are looking for a new home and have tons of talent that Auburn is a good place to come. I think on offense, certainly his offense will excite people, and they'll be looking for a chance to play in this offense, especially with a guy like Robbie Ashford, and with the running backs we're going to have like Damari Alston and Jarquez Hunter.
Yeah, right. And so there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this offense, But man, they need 5 or 6 offensive linemen.
Yeah.
Like, maybe you sign 2 or 3 high school kids that can play O-line, but you need some guys that have played offensive line at the college football level, or that's going to be a problem.
Well, that's why I asked about the portal, because the number one need is O-linemen in the portal.
Yep.
He's got to go out. Now, every time I check the portal, there's not an abundance of O-linemen out there. Like, it just seems like those guys, even if they're on a bad team, can stay where they're at and still get highly graded. Because, blocking is kind of like blocking, right? Like, if you're big and strong, you can move somebody out the way. You can stay where you're at and still make it to the next level. But ultimately, O-line cannot continue to trend the way that it started at the end of Gus's tenure.
Yeah.
And then it got worse under Brian Harsin. And then we found out with Cadillac, maybe it's not as bad as we thought, because they seemingly couldn't run block to start the year, Zach. And then they put up the most yards of any team, albeit in Tuscaloosa, on any Saban team since he's been in Alabama. So they had it in them. They've got to go out and find more guys that have it in them. And hopefully this new coaching staff knows how to get it out of them.
That's the big thing. That's the big thing for sure. Because just getting the most out of the roster. And I don't feel like that's happened in a while at Auburn, unfortunately. All right, let's talk about what the future holds for Hugh Freeze, for this Auburn football program, and kind of what we expect the next steps to be in just a moment right here on Locked On Auburn. Do you like buying Auburn gear? I like buying Auburn gear.
Hey, I love it.
The best place to buy Auburn gear is our friends at Alumni Hall, alumnihall.com for folks that are out of town. Look, perfect Christmas gift. Are you kidding me? If you listen to this show, odds are you love Auburn. If not, I don't know what you're doing here. But be sure to support our friends at Alumni Hall. All of their stuff officially licensed through the university. And it's great product, great service, great shipping as well if you choose to order online. Also, they've got a brick and mortar store if you prefer to try things on in person or whatever it may be. If you're out for your holiday shopping in Tigertown, if you're in the Auburn, Opelika, Lee County area, be sure to check out our friends at Alumni Hall. It's where I buy all of my Auburn gear, and that's where you should buy all of your Auburn gear as well. AlumniHall.com or their physical location, Alumni Hall in East Alabama. It's in Tigertown and Opelika. Mike G, our guest on this in-person War Rapport Wednesday. To me, it's all about his next few hires. Do you think, and obviously the whole maybe going to a bowl game situation is a factor in this, but what timeline do you think should we be looking at for him to fill out this staff?
It's interesting. My first question, I wanted to do a 3-part question, but I didn't want Kirk to get me. So I wanted to ask, beside Cadillac, are there any other staff members that I know for a fact that there are guys who want to continue on with this team and this organization. So I'll be interested to see if there are if there's any more retention that happens.
Who do you think is most likely to be retained? Zach Etheridge?
Yeah, I would give
Ike?
I would give Ike a chance. I would give Christian Robinson a chance.
Those are the only names I'm really hearing.
Yeah, I would give Jimmy Brumbaugh an outside chance.
I don't think there's any chance Brumbaugh.
Yeah, I'll give him a little bit of a chance. I know that he wants to stay, so he's going to be making that case and lobbying for that, but we'll see.
Yeah. So the timeline, though, do you think this happens? I mean, it can't happen by the time the portal opens, right? They can't do this in like a few days.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that would be like Houdini levels of like, hey, did you get the guy? Again, the question that I wanted to ask, somebody kind of asked it, but they didn't ask it the way that I wanted to ask it was, hey, do you have a list already of potential candidates that you're looking at? Did you come in, I know it's early, but, do you have some guys in mind for OCDC and some of these other positions? So I'll be interested to see. I think, Auburn gets a bowl game. Maybe you want to get, before bowl practices start, maybe you want to get, some of these guys in to start evaluating the guys that we have on roster.
No question about it. I mean, that's how you got to figure out who to go get in the portal, right? And so some of the needs are very obvious just from a number standpoint. Screw the talent aspect of it. It's like you need more bodies playing on both sides of the offensive and defensive line, both sides of the trenches. You probably need some linebackers as well. I think those are the ones, regardless of talent, you just got to get bodies in at those 3 levels. And then I think you want some quality depth in DBs. But I don't think we're going to lose that many DBs. Nehemiah is an interesting one. He could, in theory, come back. He celebrated, on senior day as he should, but I'm curious to see what happens with him. That's really the only guy. I don't think DJ James is leaving. Do you?
I don't think he's leaving either.
I don't get that vibe. And so you look at it and it's like, this could be a really, really solid group on the back end of the defense next year. So yeah, to me, it's O-line, D-line, and linebackers, and the rest of it, just get guys that you really like.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, he's done this before. So he's got a network of guys that he's worked with, and it sounds like he did a good job staying in contact with other coaches as well too. That's a tight fraternity. Look at the guys who reached out and congratulated him when he got the job.
Yep.
So hiring will be important. Assistants are important. I think it's very important that Auburn has an offensive identity. But if he can bring back some form of the land shark of defense,
that'd be great.
Right, then it would be great to get some excitement there. I think Auburn's done pretty well on defense over the years, even in spite of some of the troubles on the other side of the ball.
Yeah. Be curious to see if any Liberty guys follow him over too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know if there's some guys. He kind of mentioned, hey man, we had a pretty good time with the guys who came this way, to Liberty from Auburn.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's something he'll evaluate, especially if he knows those guys well.
Yeah, if somebody knows his scheme already, like there's value there, even if you don't see them as like an elite player. Like they can still be. I mean, just look at I don't know. He brought in Eugene Asante, and it's like he didn't help you on the field, but it sounds like he was a good locker room guy type thing. So there's always value in that. You're not going to play everybody on your roster. So if there's an upperclassman at Liberty that was a leader for him that wants to come with him to Auburn to be a locker room guy and kind of help instill what he's trying to build, I am totally okay with that. Don't roll your eyes at a Liberty guy coming. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I also think it'll be telling, because I don't want to be a hypocrite when I say this and have a double standard, but I was a little critical of no Boise guys following Brian Harsin. And so I think we need to kind of hold Hugh Freeze to that same standard.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, either you can play football or you can't, Zach.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
And so, this was a team that went out and beat Arkansas. There's some kids there that have some talent. So unless you're telling me he just out-schemed Arkansas.
He did.
Right? Like if it was solely that, then maybe not. But I definitely think there's some guys that he'll give a look.
Mike G, what all do you guys have going on at the War Rapport these days?
Lots of stuff going on. Our guy, Ike, put out a press conference recapper as well, too, with some clips of the press conference. Just in case you missed it, we're posting that whole presser. We're heading into the offseason, but there's no offseason for us, Zach, as the media. We're going to be covering this coaching search, so just look out for more content and more interviews.
Yeah, be sure to check out all my written work at auburndaily.com, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on Locked On Auburn.